Do you see AAA game studios as a threat coming into the Web3 gaming space?
We are a AAA studio. And you're right, we are the threat. I'm Matt. I've been with Big Time about 7 months. And then, yeah, Big Time. Big Time's been around for a couple years, so I'm relatively late to the team. And we've got about 80 or so full time people.
How do you think about this bear market situation? Is it great? Is it bad?
Yeah, the bear market is a challenge. What has been challenged for Big Time is to make sure we make a game that can stand on its own. Like you use NFTs inside of it. It's best when you use them and make your own and feed them and train them, but it can stand on its own. And you certainly don't need it to play the game, and you certainly don't need it to get ahead in the game. So it's been challenging for sure. Nobody's super pumped about NFTs right now inside of games, but we're committed to making a great game. And despite whatever is going on with NFTs right now, people are still going to enjoy playing our game.
I do think regarding this whole situation with not just the crypto market, the general world's economy is it's not doing that great with inflation rates going up. It is understandable that the current market situation isn't great, especially for a lot of NFT projects. More so on the PFPs, but I do think it's a great opportunity to find hidden gems.
Well, I mean, I think the bear market right now is going to be a testament to a lot of the projects. I mean, those who can emerge can really consider themselves as blue chips. During a bear market is like the worst time for folks to offload their NFTs because you're taking a 10x loss. So it's like you're gonna have to find a good balance of when is a good time to sell and when is a good time to hold.
What makes Big Time successful? Like, what are the components that made it successful moving forward?
I think very simply it's the team. The CEO and the chief product officer are great, of course, but I, I I have like a kind of like I kind of fan out on our developers because they're incredibly creative. They envisioned and like imagined and built a world out of new, and they try to come up with something completely different. And they're committed to a vision on it. And I gotta admit, like even with some of the stuff they released for Ruby Pass, I was like blown away. I was like, that is freaking cool. And I've played like a lot of hours. I've seen a lot of gameplay, and then I saw some of the stuff they released, and I was like, man, that's freaking cool. How'd you guys come up with that? There's this one level now where it's like a disappearing floor plan that's set above the world, and like you have to kind of like almost internally memorize it. It disappears every 5 seconds and then comes back, and you're battling bosses. It's just an incredible vision. So I think that's ultimately what's been the most successful part about Big Time. I say that we're still in alpha, and I think that's ultimately what the long term success of Big Time is going to be contingent on is making something that's new and fun, and that starts just so fundamentally with the artists and creators that are our game developers.
What were your biggest challenges when you were facing after the game launch immediately? And any tips for fellow founders that we should be wary of before the game launch?
Biggest challenge is meeting, I guess, players' demand for kind of like new content with our developer bandwidth, and it's not easy. Um, Players have been playing Big Time at a rate that is somewhat shocking to me. We've verified a few users averaged over 10 hours per day of gameplay for the last 3 months, and I was blown away when I saw
Oh,
those.
wow.
And
10
I was
hours
like,
per day.
they averaged 10 hours per day for a 3 month period, and I was like, I don't think I could do anything for 10 hours a day for 3 straight months, except maybe sleep. And it's hard, right? Because gamers like that have like kind of pushed the boundaries of content and the leveling up that we more than we expected, especially given that we're in an alpha. And so you have a new user who is like, "Hey, I've done a bunch of this stuff. I'm looking for fresh stuff." And we're also like, "Hey, we're in an alpha." And so we put some messages inside of our game right now to be like, "Hey, this is an alpha. You're gonna probably find some bugs, and we're gonna fix them as quickly as we can. We're gonna make new stuff as quickly as we can."
It's always a major milestone to have a fun game developed, right? And I truly believe that your team actually made a dent. Like, what are the next steps that you're thinking about doing?
I think so. We released our timeline almost concurrent with our Ruby Pass. Of hey, Ruby Pass is the next big wave, a lot of new content, some quality of life improvements. But the next thing was how to get people involved with space. because people spent a ton on the land sales. They want to start using it. And those are the next two major kind of milestones for us, is when you can start redeeming and using your space, setting up, and then start crafting and upgrading and collecting the in-game token. So we did release some information on that. It wasn't attached to dates that were set in stone, but it'll probably be before the end of the year. So that's big on like a big time functionality standpoint. Concurrent with that is working on esports. We actually had our first esport tournament about 2 weeks ago. It was with a mostly Chinese audience. That was good. People really like to compete, and especially if you don't have a PvP game, they really like esports in some sort of competitive way. And we're getting ready to roll out some announcements. We have an esport tournament here with a bunch of our players. So that's probably the next one we'll do in the next month or so. And we think that will kind of scratch some of the content itch that a lot of people are looking for right now.
I think one of the questions that I guess I wanted to ask, especially since you guys are driving forward in the free to play style, like, and since we're both game studios, like, do you see AAA game studios as a threat coming into the Web3 gaming space, and how do you think the game market will reach in the forthcoming future?
I got two answers for you. One's a little sassy. One's a little bit more real. The sassy answer is that we are a AAA studio, and you're right. We are the threat. We are coming here because we think that we can bring in the new wave of games inside of Web3. Right, like it's not especially profound that we kind of looked at a lot of the Web3 games that were out there. And we're like, these are not fun games. It's not that profound. It just takes a freaking long time to make these games. It takes like years, and that's basically where we're at. We're about 2.5 years in this project, and so it just takes time for this AAA studios, whoever they are, to migrate enough talent that they can actually get a game to release. We happen to be pretty fortunate that Ari and Thor are kind of visionaries in Web3, right? They were successful at Decentraland and could kind of see like, hey, this is where games need to go. They need to incorporate NFTs, but the gameplay's got to get a lot better. The other studios, their big problems, from my perspective, their gamers hate them. They have an imaging problem with NFTs, and they don't want to pollute their brand or whatever they think that means by saying they have NFTs or crypto inside of it. Probably for the reasons that we all kind of acknowledge here with the bear. But it's time for like kind of quote unquote indie or small projects to fill that space, because we do believe in the technology in the same way that you do. We definitely see like this is what gamers want because it gives so much more back to gamers.
One of the things that on the short term, I do think it's not really a threat. It's more a good thing. There hasn't been a lot of game studios. They haven't been coming in, according to institutional investors that we talked with. Their stand is very similar to what you say, Matt. The branding is of gamers talking about crypto, especially for AAA, isn't really a great thing. But what we're hearing from a lot of research is that there are economists under RPG games, especially if you think about like Microsoft under Activision Blizzard under them. They're massive teams of economists that tries to balance the ecosystem of incentives on how the users can keep playing. Now, the problem is if you introduce tokenomics, what the team are saying is that it's very difficult to handle how they can manage the tokenomic structure because it's relatively very new and they haven't seen a lot of best case practices yet. They're not going to waste or risk all the revenue generated by the current play to win market that they have on their gachas or ultimate teams that they could develop. It's kind of a way too much of a risk for them to come in now. For us to really think about how we could, as you said before, build now early as possible as an indie game market that can get that brand, especially on how you guys succeeded at that. And we're trying to follow some of the best practices that you guys made to really drive forward.
We both recognize that the sustainability of a lot of the Web3 games that were out there was not ideal. The whether we call it scalability or sustainability, we just generally saw like squint your eyes, maybe you can't put your thumb right on it, but you're like, I don't think this is gonna work. Epic, I think, is the first one because they've got Grit. It almost looks like a Cowboys theme one. And just reading this top article, the first blockchain game coming to the Epic store looks like shit. So not a glowing review right off the bat. And then I think so. Gala Games, that's a partnership with them, and then EA Games is still like, we're not ready yet. We don't want to do this yet. So they're behind on the 8 ball. And then let's see, some of the other major studios are like, we don't want anything to do with this yet. But the thing is like, that works now in a bear market, but they're gonna have to do it eventually. It's kind of like betting against the internet. I guess it keeps going back to like, you got to do something different.